Welcome to Is Anybody Listening to Me podcast with Azar in the Meat. This week we're flying without our third man. He's vaccinated, so he's out in the wild and too busy for us lately, But we still got some good stuff to talk about. Things that probably wouldn't interest them anyways. We're going to talk a little bit about Kong versus Godzilla or Godzilla versus Kong, whatever you want to call it, and dive into the Falcon and Winter Soldier. Talk about how did Meat's predictions go with the NCAA, and to wrap it up, we'll talk a little bit of potential Patriots, NFL news tied into the Patriots. Let me welcome my partner, Big Meat. How you doing, Big Meat?
I'm doing good. So Jarvis is making up for lost time. I see
He's running wild.
Vaccinated now. Yeah. He's just a dog on the loose, just going out, just trying to make up for all the lost time over the last year and a half. Good for him. Good for him. So we probably won't see him in a while.
That's true. He's all of a sudden he's too busy. But it's funny because he had all these comorbidities. That's how he got his vaccine, and all of a sudden he's fine. He's recovered so quickly. Not only the risk of COVID, but from whatever was ailing him to make him eligible for his vaccine shots. So he's a free man. It's okay.
Good for him. Good for him. He can run around and do Jarvis-y things now that go back to his old self again, because he's been a little bit angry, you might say. Sometimes a little low energy. We get low energy Jarvis sometimes. So maybe he was just it was building up. It was building up inside of him, and now that he can finally be free, we can get happy, fun-loving Jarvis again.
Well, I think it's one of those deals that he was so close to being free that I think he was just getting anxious. And how you like when you're so close to like a destination, you start getting revved up and frustrated. Like you're so close. I think that's what happened. But hopefully, I know he's excited for the NFL draft. He's got a lot of his own point of views he's going to want to share. So I'm sure he'll be back, adding his wisdom. And he's not really into any of the Marvel stuff. He's not in. He doesn't have HBO Max. So some of our topics are just a snooze fest to him. Unfortunately, I don't know what he watches. I mean, he must be sitting on
Young Rock. That's it.
The Young Rock.
Just Young Rock.
Yep. Or the missus really does just sit and take up the TV and watches, I think, the Discovery Channel. I think he said he has.
Yeah. Oak Island, right? He always talks about Oak Island. He loves that show.
And Indiana Jones movies. That's all he's watching.
That's right. And anything with Sean Connery in it. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. We do know, before we dive into anything, I thought he'd be on this podcast for this one topic. He loves Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is on Jeopardy.
That's right.
So he must be just in heaven watching these episodes of Aaron Rodgers.
That's true. Is he hosting all week? Is it like a week-long thing where he's hosting, or is it just one episode?
I didn't watch any of it. I've seen highlights of it.
Me neither,
and it sounds like it's been a couple different days of it. I don't know. I thought he's getting like a guest host for a week, but I could be totally wrong. Based on what I saw, low energy Jarvis is low energy Aaron Rodgers. Yes.
I was gonna say if Jarvis was here, we would really get him angry, because I haven't seen him host it yet, but what I've heard it's awful. I've heard he's just so dry, and there's no personality. It's just he's a very, very boring host.
Yeah,
even there was a scene where somebody gave an answer of something about like kicking a field goal. Like, would you have kicked a field goal? And it was kind of a tied back to the last playoff game where they were on the 5 or 6 yard line, and they should have threw the ball for it. Like, he should have went for it on 4th down, but instead they kicked the field goal. They ended up losing. And you thought that was going to open it up to Aaron just kind of laughing or joking about it, and he was just nothing. It just went flat. There's just nothing there. And it was, maybe they should have had Tom Brady in that spot hosting Jeopardy, and not Aaron Choke Rodgers.
It's interesting about Aaron Rodgers is unlike I always found Peyton Manning likable. Like, I liked his commercials. I liked that he could laugh at himself. I thought he had he didn't have like this like wild personality, but he seemed more real. Aaron Rodgers comes off as a dry, boring douche. Like I don't know how else to describe him. Like I after this playoffs, I have no respect for him. I feel like he's overrated. Like he's gotten so much like uh hype, how talented he is, how he's so great. He doesn't win anything. He's got all this huge reputation, but nothing to show for it. And there's all these other great quarterbacks. I'm like, honestly, he's got this shitty personality. Like they were talking about it on the radio today, and I'm seeing more people coming around to it. Like when he comes off the field, he just sits by himself. He doesn't interact with his team. He's not like this high energy. Like what Tom Brady, what makes him great is he'll grab the offensive line and scream at them. He'll grab people. He'll go over plays. You always see him sitting with Josh McDaniels going over video. I feel like Aaron Rodgers is just there to show up. Comes off like he doesn't have that killer instinct. And one way to compare him is I feel like and I'm hearing this on the radio too now, and I can't disagree. It's like Jason Tatum. All the talent, all that hype on you, and you're not a leader. Like there's something missing about you. And I feel that's something about Rodgers. There's something missing that makes him great. And I feel like what I'm watching with Jason Tatum, I think he's this great kid and he's still young, and I'm hoping I'm wrong in the future. But there's something missing on the Celtics because there's no one leading. And Jason Tatum is not taking the reins. Like it's like we all know it's your team. What do you take it? Like take control. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like he's there. Like he does his thing and goes back on the bench. He's happy. He's like, there's no killer instinct near the end. And
right.
Well, I don't know, that's a little Celtics tangent, but it's just my sport take on it right now.
No, I completely agree because Tatum, he's still young, but he's he doesn't have that winning whatever it is. He's just not a winner, right? It's something a little bit of it's a me first, and it's not. Now looking back, when Kyrie Irving was on the team, yeah, he's a douche in himself, but when he was on the team, he's been around the league for a while. He was, arguably a top 10 player in the league. He should have been the one that came in and was the leader and to lead the team. And the younger guys, being young, should have stepped aside and said, "Okay, look, we're going to support you. We're going to try to do what we can to help you try to be a winner." But no, they wanted to be the star. They wanted the ball. They wanted to score. And so, in a way, I kind of not surprised that Kyrie Irving was like, you know what, I'm out of here. I can't play with these guys. And those guys couldn't play with Kyrie Irving. I don't know. To me, I feel like you're a young guy coming into the league. Let the veteran, who clearly is one of the better players in the league, take over. So anyway, that's my just to harp on the Tatum thing. But back to Rodgers. I know Jarvis is going to love listening back to this as we're just tearing Rodgers apart. They just look at Rodgers, and this is like the media, this is the fans. He is a talented quarterback. He's got a strong arm. He's very accurate. He's mobile. He can throw on the run. He does all these dazzling plays. And so they see that, and they see the numbers at the end of the year, and they're like, wow, he is incredible, but he just can't win. And we were fortunate to have Tom Brady here for so many years, and I'll take Tom Brady knowing how to win with less talent in himself, right? Not being able to throw on the run and do all those other things that Aaron Rodgers can do over the talent that Rodgers has. So I'm with you. I totally agree. Rodgers is a little bit of a fraud.
Yeah, he's lost his luster. There's something about him, and the more you listen to him, and it's just something about his personality. It's just not an athlete that like you can root for. Like I don't know. But hey, I know he's Jarvis's favorite, and he'll shit on me because, well, you like Mahomes. But I think Mahomes is a more dynamic personality when you listen to him talk. He's still a young kid. Some of his stuff is goofy, but that's the kid coming out of him. But Rodgers he's like a veteran in the league. Like you'd think something about him would like resonate with you, but he just not likable. And I know Tom Brady, I crap on him because of the wardrobe, like the Cam Newton styling and the whole TB12, like eating guacamole ice cream. I don't relate to that stuff, but I always thought Tom Brady comes off likable in all his interviews. He's articulate. He's got energy. He can laugh at himself. I don't see Rodgers doing that. I just don't see that personality in Rodgers. So
Yeah.
that's as much as I knock Brady, he's so much a more likable guy, despite the crap he gets from the media and the country, because he's a winner. They hate him because he's a winner. We're hating Rodgers because he's a loser. So I mean, think about the difference here. Is where
That's right. That's right. So
So
so basically what we're saying is screw Rodgers and screw Jarvis.
yeah,
That's what we're saying.
amen,
Kind
amen.
of like, they both go hand in hand. Screw them both.
All right. Well, speaking of screwing things up and screwing people, oh, I had a chance to sit and watch Godzilla versus Kong, and let me tell you, there has got to be a cult following. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible. The special effects was good, and I know we were talking before the podcast, and I'm going to say it again. I thought I was watching Rampage with The Rock 2.0. Like that's all it was. It was the same. The gorilla was black in this movie. The gorilla was white in Rampage. He fought this monster, and they were smashing the city up. And the special effects were okay in some parts and lousy in some parts. I just don't get it. Like, why are you spending so much money on a movie like that? Who is following and demanding sequels to these movies? I just don't get it. I get the original Godzilla had its own following. It was so bad. It was cheesy but everybody knew it was a B movie. It was meant to be that way. Like that's what makes it endearing. It's like the original Star Trek. They're terrible. The special effects are terrible, but there's something about the original Star Trek people like, even though it's cheesy special effects and all that crap. There's something about it. These things, they put these huge budgets in it, and the stories are like, I don't know. I thought it was bizarre.
Well, it does give the nostalgic feeling, but I would say I would disagree with you in one regard because I wasn't a huge Godzilla fan like growing up. I remember as a kid it was on TV, and you're right, you watched some of the cheesy, but at the time, right, you thought it was like, oh, this looks so real, and then you look back and like, whoa, like that was bad. But I can understand the interest, of people wanted to see a movie like that. Two big monsters fighting each other over a city, and buildings are collapsing, and it's one of those things where if they haven't made a movie yet about something that came out whatever 50 years ago or even 100 years ago at this point, where they feel like we could spice this movie up, we could put a lot of special effects in it, we could do whatever we want to it, and people will like it because there's a little bit of a history to it. There's a little bit of a background that people can relate to. Like everybody knows who King Kong is. Everybody knows who Godzilla is. You know what? There hasn't been a movie yet where we had King Kong fight Godzilla, and now with all the things that we have with special effects and things we could do with movies, let's make that movie. And I think that's where the excitement comes in from people. Now, whether or not it was a good movie or not, I don't know. I haven't seen it, Azar. So
What happened to your weekend plans? I thought that was part of the weekend plan.
Shit happens, and a little bit of booze, a little here, a little, and then of course my kids like they want to watch it. So then I felt guilty, like I'm sending them to bed, and it's like, well, I can't watch it now. I promised that I'll watch it with them. So now so I gotta wait. I gotta wait to watch it with them. So, but I will. But
it's worth watching. I'm not saying not watch it. It's just, it's a head scratcher. Like when you think about the money they spent to make it, I'm just. Yeah.
Well, I think the idea of it could have been a big blockbuster movie, made a lot of money, if it was good. Whether it's good or not, I don't know. I didn't see it. You're telling me it was okay. It was just okay. So I will hold my feelings towards it until I see it. I do know the last one wasn't that great. Of course, I was called a movie snob from R3 earlier today, and I said, well, no, I'm not a movie snob. I just when I watch a movie, I want to be. It's got to be good from start to finish. It can't be like, okay, oh, that action scene was great, but the rest of it was garbage. You can't have cheesiness. You can't have like Nicolas Cage level acting in it. You can't have who was the guy, like guys with funny voices, like or
Police Academy,
like The Witcher, like he's got like he talks a little weird, like like I don't want any of that. Just make a normal movie, I mean, there's my must-haves when I see a movie, Azar. It's got to be. It can't be The Last Jedi, right? The Last Jedi was a awful, awful, awful Star Wars movie. It can't be like that. If it's anything like that, I'm not gonna like it. I'm sorry.
Now,
Does that make me a movie snob? I don't know.
now I gotta correct you. Now I don't know if this is true or not, but you're saying King Kong and Godzilla, the hype around is because two monsters that are so well known get to finally battle. There was a King Kong versus Godzilla movie in 1962. It was a Japanese, like obviously Godzilla was a Japanese movie. So
Yeah,
this
no,
movie,
but no, I know, but that's where the nostalgia comes into play because now with the special effects, like they couldn't make a movie back in 1962 with the special effects they have today. That's my point. Is like they want to see a movie like that, a movie that has come out 40, 50, 60 years ago in today's environment, like in today's with the tools that they have today in Hollywood to make a movie like that.
that's
That's what
fair.
people want to see.
Yeah, and that's fair. And
It's
again,
like it's like watching the 1980 Superman, original Superman with Christopher Reeves, right? It's like he's flying through the air and it's like he's floating. He's not even like he's not even flying all that fast. But now they have the ability. Now they're making all these Superman movies, and it's wow. Now you can get away with a lot of these better special effects. So that's my point. That's basically what I wanted to
and
say.
I don't disagree. And again, I get it. And I loved the cheesiness of the original Godzilla movies, so I'm not crapping on them. I love King Kong movies. I'm still a sucker for them, so I'm not telling anybody not to watch it. I am just still perplexed that they're spending all this kind of money and investing. And they had the girl from Stranger Things, Millie Bobby Brown,
Yeah,
as
she
one
was
of
in
the
the last
stars.
one.
Yeah, and she's in this one. They had the kid from what's his name? Deadpool, the chubby kid that Deadpool was trying to save in Deadpool
Okay.
2.
Yeah, yeah. The kid that was swearing a lot.
Yeah, Julian Dennison. They had him. Other than that, they didn't really. There's not. It wasn't like a big star-studded cast or anything that I would say.
Yeah, Kong
It,
and Godzilla were the stars.
yeah,
That
they
was
were
it.
the stars. So it was good if you like the death count. I mean, they smashed so many buildings with people in it. They had to be like hundreds of thousands of poor people in Tokyo getting stomped on. But
There you
so
go.
you'd be thrilled with that. There was a lot of carnage and destruction everywhere to be found. So
That's good. That's good. We got to do another one of those kill count episodes we did with the Rambo movies.
yeah, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. I wonder if there is a
Which
kill count.
movie has the highest kill count? And I guess I don't know. Does Avengers Infinity War count because he killed like half the universe or like trillions of people? Is that
Yeah,
maybe the biggest one? I
maybe.
don't know if that really counts. We
Yeah,
got to see the deaths on screen. That's what we got to see. That's what
yeah.
make it count.
No, it's not a bad idea. That's that. I got to look at that. I got to see if there is any stats for that. All right, so let's talk about something you have been watching, and we've been watching, is the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So I think I figured out what's wrong with the show. I did like the third episode. It was much more. I don't know if it's more. I would say more action packed, but I felt like the story was starting to get some momentum going.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I like the villain from Civil War,
Yeah.
Avengers Civil War, that he's being introduced into it. He adds that villain that I felt was missing in the first. Like, even though there is a villain in the story that is part of the plot,
Hmm.
they're not very captivating. But this kid or this guy that's coming in from Civil War, he's a baron.
Yeah.
So you find out he's
Zemo.
rich and he's more influential. I liked him. I don't know what your thoughts, but I felt like this third episode, because of the villain, or like I don't know if he's still considered the villain, but he's someone that we can recognize from the movies. It made this episode more enjoyable. But that's I don't know, that was my take on it. I felt actually I enjoyed it more, and I think it was because not the star actors, is because they brought this third guy in, and it helped accelerate the story. And there was a fourth character that we can get into too, but I don't want to get too bogged down with it. So
Yeah. Yeah. No. So it's the character's name is Zemo. Um, and yeah, he was the main villain in the Civil War movie, and a little bit of a different, almost like an anti-hero in a way in this movie, right? That he's trying to help them out, but you can kind of tell he's got like some hidden agenda in the background. He's kind of the villain, but so far he's not really playing the villain. he's a good actor, and I do like his character, and it gives a little bit of a comic relief too in it. So he's pretty good. I do like him in it. I do agree the episode was a little better because it kept the story going, and it wasn't so much just action scene after action scene. It was just there wasn't a long period of boringness, if you will. It wasn't Falcon talking to his sister for 10 minutes. It was just it just all right, the scene was over, then there was a little bit of dialogue, and then the next scene cut right into something else that was kind of exciting and interesting. And so yeah, it was much better. It's crazy that it's only a 6 episode season. We're halfway through the season now. And I just hope the last 3 episodes just go out with a bang. I hope it's the first episode was a little slow. The second episode got a little better. Third episode got better, and it's building up. So I hope they continue with that pace.
They're running out of time. I mean, I hope you're right, and I think that's what it dawned on me is my criticism of the show. I realized it's the pace of the show that is missing. Like it feels like they're just it's just a slow show. It doesn't have like that intensity. It started off with Falcon in that battle, right? Fighting those helicopters and taking out those villains. It was like a fast pace. Then it grinded to a halt. Then there's an action scene. And then it feels like there's a lot of scenes where there's a lot of like zooming in and out. They're walking. And I'm like, boy, man, can't you guys just pick up the show? Like get the pace going. Something's I can't put my finger on it other than to me it feels like the pace of the show makes it feel like a slow and not as exciting show. And because I think the story sounds pretty cool. The actors are okay. They are who they are. I just don't understand. Like there's something missing, and I keep thinking,
Yeah.
and maybe it's to me, maybe it's the pace, maybe something else. I'll figure it out. But right now, I just feel like the pace is just so slow for a show that only has 6 episodes. I don't get it. I'm like, come on.
They do say that this series is going to open the door for other Marvel. It's going to lead into other Marvel movies and other TV series. So something ends up happening by the end of the season that kind of catapults other stuff going on, and whatever that is, who knows? Like maybe um, as they introduce more of these side characters, that kind of leads into future movies, and they kind of now have a purpose. Those characters have a purpose in those other movies. I don't know, but that's what they're saying, that this particular series is going to lead into multiple, Marvel series and movies. So who knows? Who knows? I did want to say too. Mentioned this to you the other day. Is the Winter Soldier? Doesn't he come off kind of weak in this series? Like, wasn't he kind of a badass, like on the level of Captain America? And then they make this show, and it's like it's almost as if he's a regular guy, and he's not as strong as like he's supposed to be. I don't know. I feel like they've gone backwards with his character.
Well, you got me thinking about that because you saw the episode before I did, and you gave me that comment. So I was looking for what you were saying, and there is a scene when he was pretending. What's the villain's name? Zomo?
Zemo.
Zemo. When Zemo was saying, "Hey, I want you to pretend to be the Winter Soldier," right? And he goes, and he was in the bar, and he kept on calling him the Winter Soldier. And in that scene, he looked like his old self. Like he looked like he was grabbing the guy and slamming him into the bar, and he was tossing people.
Mhm.
Like it seems like I wonder, to what you were saying, I wonder if he's holding back because he doesn't want to be that guy. So that's why he's not being as destructive because
Mhm.
he keeps, how I feel about pouty characters that keep going
Mopey.
back to their past and
Yeah.
moping about, oh, I killed some.
Yes, you hate that.
That first episode, he was doing that, or first or second episode, he kept on reflecting back on the people he's killed, and he's going back. So I wonder if that
Yeah.
there is a part of him that is kind of repressing that, and then when he's told be yourself, it comes out. So I
Sure.
felt like it was coming out in that scene. I was like, I wonder if he is holding back, because when he kept on calling him, "You're the Winter Soldier," he seemed more violent. And he
Yeah.
was beating the crap out of everybody in the bar by himself. And I was like, oh, he couldn't fight four people on the back of a truck. He was getting his ass kicked, but he could take out a whole bar. Right? And I know they weren't super soldiers,
sure,
but he was like within seconds he took out the whole bar, and I was like, okay, like that's what I expect from him.
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I think I'm referring back to the truck chase scene there, and I was just like, really, like that's all he did. Like he didn't even do anything, and then also dating back to other movies, like how he was in Infinity War and Endgame. Like he's kind of been kind of a nobody character now for a little since really Civil War, maybe. I mean, since the Civil War movie, it just doesn't. It just seems like he's gone weaker and weaker as everything. Now this was just the tipping point for me. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think you're right in that. So maybe he is, holding back a little bit. So maybe that's it. Hopefully that's it. But I'm waiting for that badass episode of Winter Soldier to really come out and be what he's supposed to be. So.
But the one thing that you bring up is interesting. I think Marvel struggles with this with more than him as a character. There are times where Thor in movies is this all-powerful, unstoppable being, and then he gets his ass kicked, and you're like, huh, that's kind of weird. I thought he's all-powerful. Then you see in Infinity Wars or Endgame, Captain Marvel is supposed to be this ultimate power. And then she's getting thrown around and can't stop Thanos. And then by the end of the thing, she's this all-powerful thing destroying all the ships, like this super brute force. And I'm like, where was this a movie ago? It's like you make them out as all-powerful, and then you mute them in some scenes, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I thought they're like the only one they don't do that with is Hulk. Like when he goes rampaging, he's unstoppable. No one can stop him, and like it's consistent. But there's certain characters that they seem confused. Like Iron Man, is not indestructible. He has his moments, and it's always been consistent. But there's some characters that always stuck to me. I'm like, I don't get what happened to all of Thor's power. Like I thought he was this unstoppable guy, and then Thanos comes in and beats the shit out of him, and I'm like, isn't Thor a god? Like, why is Thanos kicking the shit out of him without? I don't know. It's just I didn't get it.
I think that's more of Marvel trying to not make it too easy for the characters, right? And after a while, they're like, well, I mean, if he's really all that powerful, and he comes in, and then the movie's over, and then what the hell are we talking about? So I kind of get that. But be consistent. Be consistent. Remember the first Avengers movie? Captain America came out, and he was like, what did he really do? He was kind of weak in that movie. And then by the time Captain America Winter Soldier came out, it was like, oh, okay, now you can see what he's capable of doing. I think it's based on the director. I think maybe certain directors just like certain characters. They're like, well, I'm going to make that person much stronger than everybody else. And then the next movie, it's like, no, I'm going to make that character that was really strong in the last movie really weak and make everybody else stronger. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing.
They're getting to the point where they're making so many of these things that it's hard to just keep track of what the hell's going on half the time.
And that's fair. And it's funny because there's some characters, they make them just more real. Like I always felt like the Black Panther character was always consistent. They never made him like he's this all powerful. He's got this suit, he can get thrown around, but pretty consistent. Iron Man, Black Widow, all these characters. Captain America went from not very exciting character to all of a sudden this most unstoppable force with him and his shield. And then they bring in this show, and this new kid comes in, and he's got the same.
And he's got the same thing. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. But again, that's some of the stuff that I always had a feeling with X-Men. They're always like, oh, he's the most powerful mutant. He's unstoppable. Well, then how are you going to beat him? And then they beat him, and you're like, I thought he was the most unstoppable mutant. And like especially when they do these villains that are like world eaters, like the Silver Surfer from the Fantastic Four, this villain comes in that can destroy the entire planet, and then he can stop them. I'm like, okay, I thought these guys are unstoppable forces, and this guy just goes in and flies into him, and that's it. And it's just I laugh at some of these things. It's like, I don't know why you create characters that are supposed to be, if they can consume planets. Isn't that kind of like, it's like Doctor Strange and his thing, right? He goes and traps this unstoppable ability. They're like, oh, no one can stop him. He goes in and he tricks him, and then oh, it's over. Okay, let's move on.
That's right. Yeah.
I laugh at it because there's always these characters, and I'm like, what? Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's the problem with having multiple directors making different their own movie and their own creative direction, and it's at the end of the day, Marvel, the studios, right? They have the final say in everything, and sometimes that's come back to really hurt them a little bit, right? They've had to redo like the Age of Ultron movie, and that was a little bit of a mess because they didn't really like where Joss Whedon was going with that movie, and Ant-Man ran into the same thing too. The director like quit halfway through it, and then they bring up a new director, and it's a mess. It's a kid just everybody just get along and just agree to make a good movie. Damn it,
Well,
because then what happens is you end up coming out with The Last Jedi, and then it pisses everybody off.
Yeah, it's funny because I think it's when you're talking about that kind of money and the money potential, people are like, no, we want the kids, we want the franchising rights, we want to make clothes and this and like it becomes
gets
greedy.
in the way. It gets in the way, and politics gets in the way. Then all of a sudden they have to like push their political agenda, and then that makes the movie even worse. And it's just make good movies. That's it. Stop with the lazy writing. Just focus on the characters, focus on the story, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, and we'll all bring this always all the way back to Wonder Woman 84. She's this most powerful, godlike character, and she ends up lassoing these
back
people.
and forth. She's just swinging on a rope back and forth at a mall. Like, what is going on?
So bad. All right. Well, that's from the entertainment, from the movie and things. I do want to say for you fans out there, just to get a teaser out there, get you excited about something to look forward to, because that's what's the nice thing about this podcast is we give you things to look forward to. Mortal Kombat. If you love Mortal Kombat as a kid, if you ended up watching the movies, they were okay. They were cheesy movies, but I loved the Mortal Kombat game. I still do. April 23rd, HBO Max is dropping Mortal Kombat. And based on some of the previews that I've watched of it and the trailers, the special effects are so much better now than when they tried to make the movie. God, it must be like over 20 years ago.
Yeah, more than that. Mid-90s, right? 25 years ago?
Yeah, maybe. Was it that long ago? 25 years? Wow. So I'm actually excited about the Mortal Kombat because that's something that I've always enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to that. So it might be a totally cheesy movie, but I love Mortal Kombat the game, and I actually did like the movie, the original movies in the 90s. So I have a little bit of nostalgia.
1995. Yeah, 95. They
Wow.
actually made a sequel to it. I didn't even realize they had a sequel to it.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Annihilation. Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, if you're around our age and you played video games, then there's no way you did not play Mortal Kombat the video game when you were younger. So this appeals to a lot of people. I'm looking forward to it.
And what I like,
very gory.
Yeah, and you know what I like is because it got me hooked in. As soon as they didn't try to reinvent characters, they brought in the classic ones that people can relate to in the previews. There could be more characters, but when I saw a picture of Scorpion in one of the scenes, I was like, oh, that was one of my favorite characters to play as in Sub-Zero. I was like, that's it. I got to watch it now because they looked cool, and I can't wait to see how they did it with the special effects. Because the 95 movie, I think the special effects is what kind of held it back. They did a good job, but
but this is my point earlier with the King Kong versus Godzilla thing, right? I mean, this was 1995 with the special effects, how it was back then. They made a Kong versus Godzilla movie back in 1962. It was like, you know what? It's time to up our game and make this movie. But you know what? This is, I mean, they make the movie and it flops and it's like, all right, we're done. Like, we're not doing another, maybe 30 years from now, maybe they'll be like, oh, we'll do a reboot or whatever. But, but Mortal Kombat deserves the reboot, if you will, because 1995 was now a long time ago. So they can make a much better movie.
And I think that has a potential to be a fun franchise if they can do it right. That would be a good one. Before we go too far on another tangent, because I want to cover a couple of topics. There's one character that I've always felt has never got taken off as a Marvel character, but they did such a great job on Netflix with them, was the Marvel Punisher character. Punisher movies were okay. The last one with John Travolta as the main villain was probably the best one out of the ones that I've seen. I think Dolph Lundgren did one as the Punisher. They were okay. They never gave it true justice of like what the Punisher was, because I was a fan of the comic book. That is one thing I could say. I had the Punisher comic books. That was my favorite comic book growing up. This series on Netflix was probably the best adaptation of the comic books. It was violent, but the guy that played the Punisher did such an awesome job. And I really do hope that they give him a chance to make a movie, like a Marvel movie or something with that character, with that specific actor, because he did such a good job. Because that's a character that I felt like never got true justice. Because like Hugh Jackman brought Wolverine to life. Like he did a great job as Wolverine through the X-Men movies. I want to see someone do that with the Punisher as someone that was nostalgic, that loved that specific character as a comic book as a kid. But
yeah, he was really good. And that was the actor. He was in Walking Dead for the first couple of seasons, and he was a great character in that movie too, or in that show. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm surprised he doesn't do more. I know he's played in a couple. He was in what was Wolf of Wall Street. He was in that. He had like a small role in it, but he was in that movie. But he hasn't done other movies. You would think he would star and carry his own movie at this point in his career. He's a good actor. I like that guy.
Yeah, it's just a shame that Marvel took it away from Netflix, because I liked where they were going with that series. I liked Kingpin. I thought he was a great villain. Like he was such a great villain. The person that they had play him was awesome in it, and
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah,
he was good.
So he did a great job, and I man, like that's the one series that I feel like I wish we got one more season out of them before they shut it all down. Because I even like the Daredevil character. I thought he did such a great job. I wish they would just say, "Hey, let's bring you back. You did such a great job." And
I think they will. I think they've been talking about bringing him back. I actually want to say he's going to be on the next Spider-Man movie. As
Daredevil?
kind of a side character. Yeah, I think so.
That'd be awesome.
So they kind of keep things under wraps, but you hear little rumors here and there, and so yeah, I hope so too, because those are good characters.
Because Ben Affleck played the original Daredevil, right?
Yeah.
That was again, that's a movie that you never got. That character got never true justice, like in a really good movie. And I think if you get the guy that played it in Netflix, you could do that movie over in replacing Ben Affleck, and I bet you would have a better movie, because Ben Affleck just was terrible in that movie.
The first time I saw Daredevil in any show was back when the original Incredible Hulk series was on, and they did a special movie. As a kid, right, I knew who the Hulk was, right? I watched the one with the guy that played the Hulk back then.
Lou Ferrigno?
Lou Ferrigno played Hulk, but the guy that played Bruce Banner, I forget his name.
Yeah.
But Lou for that series, right? And then they made a movie with Daredevil in it. And I remember watching it as a kid being like, well, who the hell is this guy? Like, this guy's blind and he's like some ninja. And I didn't get it. I was just like, this is awful. Like, what the hell is going on? And as I got older, I was like, oh, he was actually like a pretty popular comic book hero. And I see what they were trying to do there. But I didn't know that as a kid. I remember just watching that. And that was my first impression of Daredevil. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? But so my feelings have changed a little bit. In fact, I think there was another one with Thor in it as well. So they've done this before, like way back in the 80s, like the old shows, and they tried to throw extra characters in there. And so I think Marvel learned their lesson and like, you know what? It didn't work out so well when we tried to do it back in the 80s. We're going to try it again. And they're a little bit more successful now.
Well, think about it from a historical point of view. Back in the day when we were growing up, 70s, 80s, DC Comics dominated. It was Batman, it was Superman, it was Wonder Woman. They were the They had movies, they had shows, they had everything. Like people, you would think as growing up with the superheroes, those are the superheroes you thought of. And now DC Comics is trying to catch Marvel all these years, where Marvel in the 80s and 90s were trying to reproduce the magic DC had with Superman and
they
Batman.
went bankrupt.
Yeah,
went bankrupt in the early 90s. That's why they sold off all the rights to their characters, because they were like, we're going to go under here.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how things have flipped? Now we're in the 2000s, and DC can't even touch Marvel. They're trying to copy what Marvel is doing. Right. So it's just a little history factoid out there. That's just amazing if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Or we're just the biggest dorks, and we're just talking about the most nerdiest things that you can think of, and that only we would really care about. But right. But again, is anybody really listening at this point? This is why we do the podcast. Is because this is what we want to talk about. So who cares?
I look at those shows like who's the guy? Is it Kevin Smith? The guy that always wears like the hockey jersey. He's like the comic book guy. He was in Mallrats. He was in all these anyway. He does all these like comic book like reviews, right? And everybody and he does this like podcast, and he has his own little show, and he talks about all these comic book and all these people listening to him. I said, you know what? Maybe we go down that road too. Like we just start talking about the nerdiest comic book stuff, and we'll try to like pull as much attention from people. But I think people are listening to us being like, no, you don't really know comic book stuff like we do.
No,
we're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, we're not that. We're dorks, but we haven't hit the full dork, like the pinnacle of dork. But I'm sure R3 thinks we're the biggest dorks that have walked the earth right now. Unfortunately, R3 doesn't know the difference that, when you message people on Facebook, but you're in a group with people on a thread, and you want an answer, wouldn't it be faster just to message your friends that you talk to every morning than putting it on a Facebook post where most of your friends tell you they don't go on Facebook?
True. That's true. There's too many platforms these days, right? It's like, well, I put it on Instagram. Like, well, why didn't you see it on Instagram? I put it on Twitter. Like, what?
But if I was going to invite you guys to a party or something, I wouldn't go on Facebook to message you guys about, hey, I'm having a party. I would just say, hey, guys, this morning on the thread that we talk every day, hey, I'm having a party. This is the time. Can you guys make it? Why go to another platform? I don't know. If you want if you wanted a quick answer, like if I wanted something quick, I would just go to the thread. I don't go to another. Like, I'm not going to send you an email and hope you read it. It's just. But you know what? I'm gonna write him a letter and mail it to his house and ask him something, and say, "Why did you respond? Why didn't you mail me back?"
I'm gonna write a little note and put it in a bird's mouth. It's like, here you go. Send this to like I put the note in the bird. Like you didn't get it. The bird didn't deliver it to you.
I
did my part. I'm done. What?
You know what? I'm gonna strap it to Antifa Boy's leg, and when he jogs past his house, make him drop it off.
Just put it like tied to his back, so when he's running, it like blows like a flag, and it just reads.
I'm just strap anything. He's running with his marathon medals. When he jogs out every day, he's got the medals bouncing off his chest.
No doubt. No doubt.
Just tie a letter right there. All right. So let's go to a topic. Let's go into it's still entertainment, but from a sports perspective, Big Meat made a lot of predictions for the NCAA Final Four.
I did.
You weren't that far off. You had some good calls. I give you credit. The UCLA game versus Gonzaga was down to the wire, and you actually were nervous about the spread. So you helped some people that were betting, because you said that's a tough spread, because you actually said, I'll give you props. I will pat you on the back, Big Meat, before you spend 20 minutes doing it yourself.
Thank you.
That was a good call on that bet, because UCLA did put up a fight and made that game close. And I think the spread was like 13 or 14 points.
Yeah. I think it went up to 14.5 at one point.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a good call. What happened in the Final Four? What happened?
So I see, the Final Four. So with the Gonzaga UCLA game, which, by the way, was unbelievable. Like probably one of the best, if not the best, Final Four basketball game of all time. If you didn't watch it, then you missed out on an unbelievable game, unbelievable finish. At the buzzer, like almost a half court shot, to go in. He banked it, and it was incredible. The Baylor Houston game, the Baylor, blew them out. I actually thought Gonzaga was gonna pull it off. They were gonna be the first team to go undefeated and win the championship. They didn't. Baylor came to play. I was surprised. Because all I kept following was Gonzaga, and they're a very talented team, and they went undefeated, and they were great and all. And they have a lot of stars on their team that are going to play in the NBA. But I didn't realize how big Baylor was. There were some big dudes on that team, and they played aggressive. They played a flawless game, as flawless as you could possibly get. And every time Gonzaga tried to chip away at Baylor's lead, Baylor just pulled away. So, hats off to Baylor. I'm shocked that Gonzaga didn't end up winning the whole thing, but Baylor deserved it. Baylor played great, and they ended up, they shot from they had a great 3-point percentage. They hit all their threes, and Gonzaga didn't. And it's the old saying, you live by the three, you die by the three, and that's what happened in that game. If Gonzaga hit a few of their threes and Baylor missed a few of their threes, it would be a whole different ball game. But yeah, it was just like I was kind of rude for Gonzaga because I like to see history being made. I like for Gonzaga to say, hey, we went undefeated. Imagine those kids, right? A lot of those kids are leaving. They're either graduating or they're moving on to the NBA. That was their last college basketball game. Imagine going into your college season, your last season playing for your college, and saying, wow, we have an opportunity to be the first team since 1976 to go undefeated and win a championship, and the first to go through a 64-team tournament and do this. They would be remembered forever. Some people were talking about it before the game that they could be the best college basketball team of all time if they won it. So for kids, right, in college, they must be heartbroken. They'd just be like, like I can't believe we went through a whole season, 26 whatever in the regular season, another few in the NCAA tournament, 30 plus games, and then you go to lose in the last game. That's a tough way to go out, but it was
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, but Baylor, like I said, they came to play. They came to play because every time I was watching that game, I was like, Baylor is they're not afraid. They weren't like, oh, the pressure's on, like we're going against this undefeated team. No, Baylor was like, we're not going to let you come back in this game. We got off to an early lead. We are not letting you come back. So hats off to them.
Now, I would think this is true, but I might be wrong because I'm not the biggest NCAA basketball fan, to be transparent. But I've got to imagine some of the things that makes the uniqueness of the NCAA basketball, how difficult it is for a team to repeat the following year, because a lot of their key players tend to either be graduating or going to the NBA. For the superstar teams that are loaded, like the Gonzaga team, they're not going to be able to repeat this next year because they have to rebuild again. They have to rebuild their roster. Yeah. They'll be, a lot of the teams are always competitive. You always think of the same teams being competitive every year, but it's really hard. Unlike other sports, you can't. It's difficult to reproduce great years, right? Because of players' movement, right?
Sure, it is, but it comes down to recruiting. So if you do have a good team, like a good basketball program, it's easy to recruit the next high school level talent. Now with Gonzaga, yeah, there's a few guys that are moving up going to the NBA, but they were so deep in their roster that the next guys are going to step up. They're going to be a year older. Now they're going to be the leaders of the team, and they have high hopes for those guys to take that next step up. So, but it is hard. You're going to lose a lot of talent to the NBA. They just got to keep up with their recruiting process. That's why Duke is good every year. They just everybody wants to go to Duke. They graduate high school and you're an all-star and Mike Krzyzewski comes to your door and says, "Hey, come play for me at Duke." Chances are you're going to say yes. So it's
true, but they just, don't. But Duke doesn't win it every year.
Programs.
They
that's
don't,
what
but
they're competitive. They're competitive every
exactly.
year.
It's like college basketball is the same way. Like there's some programs, they're in it every year. They're the competitive teams every year, right? But it feels like to basketball, I think it's even harder because I think football players stay most of their 4 years in college, right? Some will opt out their junior year, but most teams stay together, right? But I feel like college basketball, I think there's more turnover. I might be wrong. I get the impression there's more turnover because you can go in
Well,
younger.
yeah. Well,
NBA.
in basketball, right, you have a roster of 12 or so, and there's usually a few stars on the team, right? There's like a lot of the kids don't play a lot of minutes. It's two or three big name stars. Where in college football, you have your star quarterback, but they've already recruited the next best quarterback. You know, you look at
Exactly.
Alabama, yeah, like Tua, then they went to I forget the next quarterback after him, and then now it was Mac Jones, and it was just it's like once that guy leaves, the next guy steps in. In basketball, you know, if you don't have that one superstar to take over, now you might fall back a little bit. Now you got to build up your program again and try to do a good job of recruiting. But um, yeah, you see much of the same teams. Some teams like Gonzaga came out of nowhere 15, 20 years ago. They weren't, you know, like who was Gonzaga? And then all of a sudden they had a little bit of success in the NCAA tournament. All of a sudden they're like, oh, they're an up and coming team. Now players want to go play for them. That's just kind of how they build it. UCLA was, you know, the best college basketball team of all time throughout like the 60s when Lou Alcindor, who ended up becoming Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they ended up winning. I forget how many championships they won, like 8, 9, or whatever in a row. I mean, it was a lot of NCAA championships. Bill Walton, you know, played for them, so they're like the best college basketball program of all time. They were winning year after year after year. It's easy to say, okay, who's the best high school athlete, high school basketball player in the country? If I give his parents a call right now and say, I'm going to give you a full scholarship, come play for, you're going to be a starter on my team. Come play for me for UCLA that we've won the last 5 years in a row. That basketball player is going to be like, hell yeah, yeah, I'm going to go play for UCLA. You know, so you know, success kind of
Oh,
helps that
absolutely.
along, helps
No,
people
I
to
agree. I just feel because there's so many teams, the turnover. Basketball can be a little bit more unpredictable when you get into the March Madness versus, and I don't know. I feel like with college football, it seems a little bit more. You just expect the same great teams to always be in it every year. Like it's
yeah.
just the same. Because to your point, it goes back to the recruiting, the legacy. You know, like trying to think of like the big programs like Alabama and you know and all those programs. But anyways,
By the
that's
way, it was from what I said earlier for the for Alabama. It was Tua, and then Tua went to the NFL, and then it was Mac Jones. I forgot Tua only played one season last. He was a rookie last year.
yeah.
So yeah, so then it was Mac Jones that took that. Now next year it's going to be the next guy. It's going to be the next guy up in college
Yeah,
football.
that's because they get the pick of the litter. They get to pick whoever
Yeah,
they want
yeah.
to come
Nick
play in the
Saban,
program.
same thing. Nick Saban just shows up at your door and says, "Yep, he's
Yeah,
going to be my starting quarterback. Maybe not next year, you know, because I still have Mac Jones there, or whoever. But once he's done, he's going to be the next star, and I can
yeah.
make him into a big star. NFL's going to want him, you
Well,
know.
that's the
So
big thing, right? Because it's like you play here, you have a better ticket to get into the NFL,
right,
and in the NBA, I know there's certain college programs too. Like you play here, you're gonna get more likely to get recruited from our NBA to the NBA from our college program. So
yep.
no, I get it. That's what makes college basketball and college sports interesting. I think just being from the Northeast, we just don't get into it as much as people from other parts of the country that really follow college
hmm
sports. I mean, I'm one of those. I
we
follow it from the outside, but
I'm very much as I prefer professional sports myself. I don't really follow that much college because there's not. But you know what though? If Boston College had a great basketball program, or UMass, or you
yeah,
know, or football, or BC football, like I mean, if they were, you know, playing in national championships every other year, like maybe the story would be different. Maybe, you know, we just don't have that here in the Northeast. It just
well,
teams just
we get
aren't good
glimpses of it.
enough.
We get like UConn sometimes, UMass
Sure.
sometimes. You get glimpses of it, but you're right. Like I always try to watch BC football, and I always just fall off. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a long season. Like, and it's a shame because if when they're good, I'm the most recent I'm thinking is going back to when Matt Ryan was
Yeah.
the quarterback. I think that was that the last time they were really competitive.
Probably. Yeah. I
Okay.
was 15 years ago. Yeah,
Yeah.
12 years ago. Yeah, they were.
I remember
But
watching
even
it.
then, they weren't. They weren't like number one ranked or anything like that.
No, but I think
You got to go back to Doug Flutie days for
yeah,
for for that
yeah.
mid
I
'80s.
I agree.
But they
I agree.
produce great players. They like Matt Ryan, Luke Kuechly. Going to BC. They produce good players. It's just teams like they can never dominate. You
Yeah.
know.
Well,
I mean, I can
hopefully.
tell you, like from a local like local Lowell, for Lowell, it's high school level, but with Lowell High, their basketball team a year before the pandemic, right? They were on their way to making it deep, like into national, high school, and then ended up losing. But people around here were going nuts over it, and that was high school. Well, it's high school basketball. So I think there would be that level of interest if the teams were good enough that you feel like they can go on and win the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think that's some of the challenges for this. Like when you think of the Celtics and even like the Red Sox, if you don't think their team's going to go deep, I think you tend to kind of take your foot off and paying attention as much because if you know your team's not going to make it to the playoffs or get past the first round, we kind of dismiss the Celtics. At least in the years past, I'm thinking of this season, but in years past, you always felt like there was hope that they'll go deeper in the rounds and maybe they'll get lucky and get into the finals. But like right now, I feel like I've taken my interest off the Celtics because I'm like, they're just not going to go anywhere. And I feel like I don't want to put in that time if I know you're not going to go anywhere. And that's sometimes where I get sucked in with the Red Sox. And sometimes they prove me wrong. But some seasons with the Red Sox, I'm like, I'm not watching all these games to watch a team suck. Like, it's just not worth my time.
Yeah.
So I hope we don't get that way with the Patriots because that's what I'm going to segue into. We still got Cam Newton. And last year, even with the pandemic, I wasn't watching Patriot games. I was shutting them off. I was like, I have other things to do. I don't want to watch Cam Newton play. And I love watching football. And I rather sometimes, and it's tough because I know in New England they black out other games. But if there was a way for me to watch another game, I would watch the other games. Like the Patriots games with Cam Newton are unbearable. And I'm just picking up where Jarvis is left off. I know he hates Cam Newton.
You're putting your Jarvis hat on here.
I'm putting my Jarvis hat on.
Jarvis is on the podcast, so you have to take over for him.
Well, it's
Cam
funny
Newton bashing.
You can't escape Cam. Like the negativity towards Cam is unescapable in New England. Every sports show, every sports channel is telling you Cam, they need to replace Cam. Like every article I read on the blogs or whatever from the not from the Patriots blogs, but like from the radio station blogs, they're all like looking for the next quarterback. like who's the Patriots got to get somebody. And I think Jim Murray from 98.5 says it best. ABC, anybody but Cam. Like that's just the three things. Oh, anybody but Cam is where we're at this point. And so speaking of that, to go into the NFL news, the transition, the Carolina Panthers traded with the Jets to get Sam Darnold, who they already have Teddy Bridgewater. And they actually signed Teddy Bridgewater for some good money. So I'm actually kind of surprised they're already giving up on Teddy Bridgewater. But they decided to move on, or it sounds like they're going to move on because the news is they're still going to draft a quarterback with their pick. I don't know why. I'm a little confused. Like, then why go get Sam Darnold? I'm a little perplexed by this. But we'll see on draft day. So the question has been coming out, Teddy Bridgewater. Is Teddy Bridgewater a more viable option for the Patriots and more realistic than trying to chase Garoppolo and try to give up a first-round pick for? What are your thoughts on that one?
I do think that San Francisco is going to draft Mac Jones, and Mac Jones he's not going to come to the Patriots, I don't think. Unfortunately, I think the 49ers put a monkey wrench into all those plans because once they traded up in the draft and they got the number 3 overall pick, I think they did that for a reason. They want to make sure they get their guy. I think their guy is Mac Jones. So I don't see them. I think if they could trade Garoppolo for a first-round pick, they would do it to the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots want to do it, but maybe next year they're going to do it. I think they're going to play Garoppolo this year, and then next year they're going to put in Mac Jones. So it is more realistic to get a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who I like. He's a good player. He's better than Cam Newton. I'd be happy with Teddy Bridgewater. I heard he's a great guy in the locker room. Everybody loves him. He won some award. I forget, what he won. He won some like award for leadership or like being just a good locker room guy. So if Darnold's the guy in Carolina and Bridgewater's expendable, then maybe you do go out and get Bridgewater. But maybe that's what we'll see in the draft. They'll once the draft comes around, maybe they want to trade their 15th pick. I wouldn't trade the 15th pick for Bridgewater, but I would trade, maybe a second rounder or maybe even a third rounder. I think a second round might be too much for Bridgewater. Maybe a third rounder for Bridgewater. I think Carolina might want to do that. But this is where I think Belichick is being smart. I know in a couple of weeks before the draft, we're going to have a big podcast to talk about the NFL draft coming up, and we'll get into really a lot of the players there. But I do think Belichick is now at that point where he just wants to wait till the draft. He wants to see what happens. He wants to see who the 49ers take. He wants to see what players fall to him at 15. And then maybe he could start making some moves, trading some picks around. And if he feels like he doesn't have a quarterback by round 3, then I could see him reaching out to Carolina if they haven't given him up yet and say, hey, I'll trade you my 3rd round pick right now for Bridgewater. I could see him doing something. So I think he's just playing the waiting game right now and seeing what's available.
I can see that. Now, Teddy Bridgewater's contract was $63 million with, I think, a $15 million signing bonus, if I'm reading it correctly. And was it $33 million guaranteed? Now, that he signed that last year, so he was only 1 year into this contract. Yeah. With the Patriots, if they traded for him, they'd either have to restructure his deal or they got to eat the rest of that contract, right?
It depends on how the contract is laid out. If they spread that money over the years that he signed for, yeah, I mean they would have to eat that unless Carolina agrees to take a lot of that salary, and then it ends up becoming dead cap money for Carolina if they want to eat that. It all depends on what they agree to.
Yeah, because I don't always understand the cap stuff, but it says here that he signed through the 2022 season and have a cap hit of nearly $23 million for next year on his cap. So that's for the following year. So does that mean the Patriots would have to absorb that cap hit by taking him on?
Unless Carolina decides to take it themselves. Right? You could trade a player and say, look, I'll trade you this guy, but you got to take 50% of his salary or whatever the case is. So I have the numbers here for Bridgewater, and he is a cap hit of almost 14 million. Okay, this was this year, 2020, and then 2021, it's going to be 23 million cap hit.
So for this upcoming season, it's 23 million.
Yeah. For 2021, it'll be 23 million, close to 23 million. But then it says that he has an out for 2022 and 2023. No, he'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2023. So 2022, he would only get paid, well, I say only, but 26 million.
Okay. Now
it looks it's the next 2 years. 2 years. This year, 23 million. Next year, 26 million.
So they'll be tying up a lot of money if they try to keep. It's unlikely they'll keep Sam Darnold and Teddy Bridgewater and try to draft a quarterback. It seems like that's a lot of money to be throwing around.
Yeah. So they have if I'm reading this correctly, it's so they have an out for Teddy Bridgewater after 2021, and if they decide to cut him, it's only a $5 million dead cap hit. So only $5 million, or they pay him $26 million. So, it kind of makes sense, right? After this year, if they like what they see from Darnold, maybe they just cut Bridgewater and they just lose $5 million, and they don't have to pay him $26 million after this year. So maybe that's their plan. Who knows? But
so from a stats wise, he's definitely got almost double the touchdowns. So he threw for 3,700 yards in his first year with Carolina as the quarterback, with 15 touchdowns, 11 picks, played only 15 games, but he had 279 yards rushing, which I thought he would have more. I always thought of him as more of a running back, but not quarterback. But 279 yards, but he had 5 touchdowns with 279 yards rushing. So it's better than Cam.
Yeah. And he's a lot younger. And I do like Teddy Bridgewater, but
now he gets hurt a lot though. I always thought Teddy Bridgewater was a player that got hurt a lot over
big injury 2 years ago. He had a big injury and he came back and he was able to perform. Remember, he was Drew Brees' backup for New Orleans for 2 years ago, and then Brees got hurt, and then he stepped in and went 4-0. I don't remember his numbers being great, but he won. He was able to lead the team and being able to win. So Bridgewater is not somebody who's going to put up huge numbers, but I hear he's a smart quarterback and he's a little bit of a winner, and to go back to the Aaron Rodgers bashing that we did earlier, Aaron Rodgers is not a winner. Bridgewater is the opposite of that. He can win.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like him. I think he's smaller in size than Cam Newton. I mean, I think, what did it say? He's 6'2". He's 6'2", 214. So he's definitely much smaller in weight compared to Cam Newton. So I don't know if he could take the physical abuse of running the ball like Cam at the goal line as much as Cam probably could due to his size. But I don't see it as a bad gamble for the Patriots. I don't think you have to give up a lot to get him. I think that's the good thing about Teddy Bridgewater. It's not a big price. And you know what? Why not have both Teddy Bridgewater and Cam Newton on the roster? If you really believe in Cam Newton, let him start, but at least have a solid backup in Teddy Bridgewater. Because why rely on Stidham? Because Stidham can't do the job. So I'd feel more comfortable, and maybe this would ease our man Jarvis's feelings about it, if they had someone like a veteran quarterback like Bridgewater behind Cam Newton. So let them start with Cam, but at least there's probably a more viable quarterback that might actually give him real competition to maybe push Cam Newton to work harder and pick up the offense. Because I think that's what he needs. I don't think we can get by. My biggest fear is if you put a rookie behind Cam Newton and Stidham's on the roster, what's the motivation for Cam to work harder and figure out the offense? He's not going to lose his job. We saw that this year. They refused to give away his job. They refused to give it to Stidham. So we need someone to put a little fire. If Belichick was willing to do that with Brady and bring in Garoppolo to put a little fire under Brady's ass, you're telling me he wouldn't do that for Cam Newton? Come on. He's got to give him something to motivate him.
So I am going to correct myself here before R3 has a fit. So I probably mistakenly called Bridgewater a winner. He went 4-11 last year with Carolina. So maybe he's not that big of a winner as I thought he was, but they didn't have CMC for most of the year. I know it's making excuses now, but I just think
first-year coach, the whole offense was revamped.
Yeah, and his numbers were decent. I don't know if he was really the main issue as why they were that bad, but like I said earlier, he's better than Cam Newton. I'll take him at this point. There's very few starting quarterbacks or potential starting quarterbacks that I would take over Cam Newton, Bridgewater, or I wouldn't take over Cam Newton. Bridgewater is not one of them. He is one of the guys I would take over Cam Newton. So if you can get him on the cheap, I'm all for it.
I'm with you. So I wanted to just keep feeding the whole rumor mill. Again, Cam is the focus because the biggest need that we keep talking about is quarterback. So I did see an article today from Ryan Hannibal that talked about that the Patriots appear to be interested in a quarterback from Texas A&M, Kellen Mond.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
I did. So I was actually going to. This is before the article. So I'm building up my notes, Azar, for our big NFL draft podcast in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Because I'm starting to move away from my Mac Jones prediction because
that's big.
Only because I'm pretty sure the 49ers are going to draft him, and the 49ers had to make that big jump to be third overall to make sure they get their guy. Now I think the Patriots might be scrambling because I think the top 5 quarterbacks are going to be gone by the time the Patriots draft, which leads them to the next guy the next couple of quarterbacks that are available in the second and third round, Kellen Mond could be one of them. There's another quarterback as well, and maybe I'll reveal that in a couple of weeks. There's another quarterback that I think they might be aiming for. So we could be looking at a Patriots taking a second round or a third round guy at that quarterback spot.
Now, can I hint? Is he from Florida?
Yes, he is.
Ah.
Trask. Yes.
All right. So I'm not gonna say anything. I'll let you talk about him. I'm gonna give my brother-in-law props because he was here over Easter, and he's all in on Trask. He is. Yeah. He said he's got all the qualities that would make him a star at New England. So he's all in on him because he says he's a winner. He's got that winning. He's a fighter. Yep. I'm not gonna steal his thunder, but I'll give him props. That's why I wouldn't have known it if it wasn't for my brother-in-law giving him props. Like, okay, I mean, he was selling him hard.
Yeah,
like he's already got his biggest fan ready to go if he gets drafted.
Well, those were my two guys that I was gonna say that one of those guys could be the quarterback that Belichick might be because he's not gonna get into the top five, the big five, because they're all gonna go like top 10, top 12, and that leaves the Patriots like, oh, shoot. Well, now we still need a quarterback, so we're going to draft the best available player in the first round and hopefully, get one of those guys in the second or third round. So your brother-in-law is
he's on to something.
He's on to something.
He's going to love it because he listens to this podcast.
I agree.
He's now going to be all in to see your assessment of Trask now.
Okay.
He's all in.
All right. Very good.
I guarantee.
Very good. I love it.
So
I love it. I'm looking forward to that one. Yeah, that's going to be a fun one because I think I said this on last week's podcast. I think I've done more. I'm more intrigued about this NFL draft than ever before, and maybe it's because the Patriots are finally drafting somewhat high. 15th is not really that high, but it's higher than what they've normally drafted, where they're drafting 28th, 29th, 30th, and it's like, end of the first round. Who the hell are we going to get? Yeah. Now they've got 15th, and it's a deep draft with a lot of players, and the fact that they need a quarterback, and there's 5 of them that are pretty good coming into. So it's just an exciting draft coming up. I'm intrigued. I think this draft is so deep that it's going to be one of those drafts years from now. We're going to be looking back. We're going to say, "Wow, that 2021 draft was great." They had a lot of players. There's a lot of stars in this league that came from that draft.
I hope you're right.
I truly believe that.
I hope you're right.
And the Patriots could get one of them.
Yeah, I've never been this fascinated with the draft, and I know it's because of the podcast, but this is a year that we haven't been on the hunt for like a star quarterback, and we're in such a desperate need. Like we were watching, like I'm reading everything I can about the quarterbacks in the draft, free agents, quarterbacks. Like I never really focused on people's I never got this into. In other past seasons, just how much
I love it
movement. But this year's got me so intrigued that I'm hooked.
I do love it, and the fact that the Patriots went nuts in free agency, and they got all these guys, and now you're a little bit more excited about the team, and you're like, well, gee, their defense could really be great if they only had a quarterback. Yeah. So now you're just even more intrigued. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. But I like that. I like that Trask. Prediction there. That's a good one. I do like him too. So
we'll save it.
We'll see. I do have another bit of NFL news to share.
On
this podcast as well. Something that I think you might be a little excited about, Azar.
Oh, please give it to me.
Did you hear that Giovanni Bernard got released by the Bengals today? Do you know what that means?
He's coming to the Patriots.
No. Joe Mixon is going to be huge for the Bengals.
Oh, no.
Joe, this is more reason to draft Joe Mixon in this year's fantasy football draft.
Oh, no.
First round. Bernard's out of the way. Mixon's the guy. He's the man.
Did that make the cuts for the magazines? I'm dying to see what the magazines have already written about Joe Mixon for this upcoming year.
I'm telling you. That's what they're going to say. They're going to say, "Oh, Bernard's not getting in his way now. Mixon is just the sole guy there in Cincinnati." He even came out a few weeks ago saying he feels good. His body's healthy. He's refreshed. He's ready to go. These are what the magazines they're gonna hype him up, and he's going to be a first round mock draft pick in their magazines. and
We re-signed James White, didn't we? Sign him for we re-signed James White on
James
the
White.
Patriots.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. Okay.
Patriots. Yeah.
So I guess they're not going to go after Bernard. I guess
No, they won't. No, this was more of a Joe Mixon take than
yeah.
anything.
No,
This was more of a hyping up Joe Mixon. This could be the year.
all right. So
This
I
could
will.
be the year, Azar.
I will on this podcast because I know you and I buy magazines. You know, not like Angry Jarvis here who doesn't waste his money on such frivolous things. But I am going to read the exact word for word profile on Joe Mixon. And if he's in the top 10, actually, I'm going to say this. Any magazine, if I open it and he's in the top 10, I will not be buying that magazine. That magazine.
So I like that you bring that up because I actually do that when I pick my magazines. Not specifically about Joe Mixon, but I do go through and I flip through and I say, you know what? If I see some idiotic thing that's in here, like they're putting some guy in like the top 10 that just doesn't belong there, I don't buy it, right? And sometimes I'll think of a certain player when I'm like, where are they ranking this guy? And I'm looking like, the hell? Got this guy like a top 5 wide receiver? Like, this garbage out of here. I'll grab another magazine. That's how I pick my magazines.
Well, it's going to be called the new Joe Mixon standard. So if Joe Mixon, and I'll tell this because I know there are people on the podcast that do buy magazines. If he's anywhere in the top 10, put the magazine down. It's garbage. You can do your own research or just listen to our podcast because our insight is probably more accurate than whatever is in that magazine at this point. So I might be like Jarvis. If all the magazines have him in top 10, I'm not buying a magazine. I'll go on the record and say that right now because I will not tolerate a Joe Mixon belly laugh from Roper this year. I will not be a victim of it.
Somebody will be a victim. Somebody will draft him. I still wonder who's going to go first, Joe Mixon or a Detroit Lion. Who's going to be drafted first? I want you to throw your shoe at somebody.
I will have my shoe. I just want to make sure I don't draft it. I'm going to forget that. I got to write it on my hand.
You do. You got to put a little reminder in your calendar as the draft approaches. Do not, all uppercase letters, do not draft any Detroit Lion.
Yeah, because that would be humiliating, getting a shoe thrown at me with my own threat. So I that would ruin my day. That would ruin my draft if I forget and I get a shoe in the side.
I think at this point now, as soon as somebody drafts the first Detroit Lion, it has to happen. Everybody's got to take their shoe off and throw it at that person. It just has to happen. Now it's like there's no turning. I'm putting it in my calendar as we speak to remind myself to throw my shoe. I might wear my cleats that day.
Yeah. Metal. Just get a pair of metal cleats.
Yeah. Or like the heaviest boots I can find.
The steel toe boots. Yeah, it's funny because I think it's going to end up happening. It's going to be when the raccoon hires an assistant to draft for him. They're not going to know that this is in play. And he's not going to remember to say anything. And he's all of a sudden going to be drafting. And he's going to get a shoe in the side of his head. So
all 9 other team owners throwing their shoe at him all at the same time.
Oh, I can't think of a better way to think of throwing a shoe at someone to end this podcast. That's making me laugh to go right to wrap this up now. So I don't know, Big Meat. I got nothing else. Any closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
My only closing thought, and I'll be quick, and I'm sure if Jarvis is listening to our podcast, he could appreciate, and also the other guy on our thread, which we're still trying to figure out what a good nickname for him is, but he knows who he is once I mention it.
We'll have a weekend to figure that out soon. It will be soon, but after we spend some time together, we will have a nickname for him by the end of our trip.
He does call Jarvis Tubos. So people know who we're referring to here, but it's the biggest sports spectacle this of the year coming up this weekend. You know what that is, Azar?
WrestleMania.
It's WrestleMania weekend. Exactly. It's a 2-night special event. So
2 nights.
There we go. I can't wait to break it all down with Jarvis on next week's podcast.
Yeah, I won't be on that podcast because I was trying to follow that on your text thread, and I wanted to stab myself because I'm like, they're still talking about wrestling, and I am like 30 texts deep. I'm flipping. I'm like, this is still going on. And that's the problem with this trip. I'm going to end up flying back home by myself because if I have to listen to one more freaking wrestling talk, I'm going to go shoot myself. I know it's going to end up happening.
Oh
between you
yeah.
two clowns.
Yeah, we're gonna do it on purpose now, not just for
But
the.
at least you're more modern. Like you and Matt actually follow wrestling. Jarvis is like this nostalgic, love struck from the like 80s and 90s. Like I feel like that's what he's clinging to. Like when he talks about anything, he goes back to his like hard on for The Rock and all the classic wrestlers. And there seems to be like a lot of documentaries coming out. A&E's coming out with now a documentary on WWE wrestlers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned Dark Side of the Ring is coming out with
New
some more
season,
episodes.
yeah.
So you know what? Again, wrestling has its own cult following. There are people that are diehard. Our future sidekick on our future trip it's going to be interesting with him. Like
he
he's
loves
a
it more than
wrestler.
He loves it more than both Jarvis and I combined, I think. So our we'll have to we'll have to up our game when we talk wrestling with this guy, because he's all in. He's all in on it. He would be somebody that would be willing to just like pay the money and go to WrestleMania. Like he'll go and like sit in the front row, where I'm like, you know what, I think I'm good watching it at home. I don't know if I want to pay the
I can see it.
Pay the arm and a leg for that, but
you're a liar. If you got a ticket, you would go with them. I know you.
I would go if I didn't have to pay for it. Yeah, absolutely. I would pay. It's like $10,000 to go to one of those things. Just sit in the front row.
Meat.
No
we
way.
know you got the funds. You're a mad cryptocurrency investor
that
now.
Is
we know.
True.
So
that is true.
You just gotta wait to hit. I could see you selling all your cryptocurrency just to get into WrestleMania.
It could. I'll be the guy that gets so drunk at the event I'll hop the fence and jump into the ring and get tackled by security. That would be famous. That's how we kick off our podcast. People will be like, "Oh, who was that guy? Oh, he hosts a podcast with a guy named Azar," and all of a sudden it's like we blow up from there. I'll have to spend a night in jail, but I think it's worth it for the podcast.
I don't see that from any different other night when you go out to the bars. I see that as a pretty regular occurrence that you jump over things and almost get arrested. I think that's pretty common for you. So I don't know how different it is and unique it is that it happens at WrestleMania, but I can see your point. I can see it. All right, Big Meat. Well, we found something to talk about. We did it. We went over an hour. I don't know how. We were a little nervous, but I guess we're big talkers. And I'm sure R3 is like, shut the F up when he is done.
This is such a long podcast.
The man that loves to hate listen is there. All right.
Hate listener. That's right.
We'll wrap it up there. All right. As usual, if you could review us on Apple Podcasts, that's where you can find us, SoundCloud, and on YouTube. You can also do reviews. We have not been blocked from YouTube, but I'm sure at some point we will be for something that we do with our shenanigans. Or something Jarvis says on our podcast that we have to edit out or forget to edit out.
Oh, very likely. Very likely.
More than likely. All right, Big Meat. Have a good night.
See ya.